Hey everyone, Sarah here. Welcome back to my channel. So one of the first things that stood out to me after I moved to Germany from the US is the many ways that numbers can be really confusing here. And I'm not just talking about one or two differences. The situation has gotten even crazier the longer that I've been here. So today we're going to go over 8 different ways that numbers could be confusing to Americans who come to visit Germany. Without further ado, let's get right into it. So the first thing that Americans are probably going to notice about Germany and actually Europe more broadly is the usage of 24-hour time. We sometimes call that military time for those who may be familiar with that, but it is something that you will have to get used to if you are thinking about moving to Germany. Otherwise, you may be missing a very important appointment or your train. I would recommend that if you are planning to visit Germany, whether for a trip or for something longer, that you try and set your phone to 24-hour time so that you can sort of get used to it ahead of time. I have to say that was really helpful for me and it helped me ease into it a little bit easier. It was really funny too because the other day on Reddit, maybe I'll link it down below, but I saw a meme that was making fun of people that use 24-hour time, that there is something strange about us. But the thing is outside of the US, it's very commonly used. So, however, I do realize it can take quite some time to get used to. But that was definitely one of the first encounters of a difference of numbers that I experienced compared to the US. Speaking of time, actually another one of the interesting aspects is dealing with half hours. In English, we would call this 6:30 or 6:30. Now, if you asked a German the same thing about what time it was, they would probably say it's 6:30 or 6:30. So instead of counting up from the bottom number, they actually count down from the upper number. It gets even more interesting when we talk about quarter of an hour or 15-minute increments. Here is called a Viertel. This time that we would say is 6:15 is 6:15, which also means 15 minutes toward 7. So it's 1/4 toward 7, 6:15. So this can actually be a really difficult thing for people to understand, not just Americans. In fact, I very incorrectly assumed that 6:15 would be 15 minutes after 7, but it is 15 minutes in the previous hour toward 7. Another super confusing numbers switcheroo has to do with decimals and thousands. Here is how we would write 1,000 in the US. And here is how we would write 1,000 in Germany, and actually Europe more broadly. Can anybody explain to me why the decimal and the comma switch places across the Atlantic? Please leave me a comment down below if you have the answer to that, because this has been one of the most confounding things to me and has often led me to some troubling situations when I'm using Microsoft Excel. I forget that the version I'm using is the German version, but I have it set to the English language, so I think it's the American version, but it is in fact not. Speaking of the old switcheroo, let's talk dates. Want to go out sometime? I'm just kidding, not those dates. I'm talking about day, month, and year. Whenever you're going to be filling out a form or making plans, you need to know that there are some differences. In the US, we always write the date as the month first, and then the day, and then the year, just like this. So today is, what day is it? Today is February 21st, 2021. So in the US, I would write this as 02/21/21. And I think it is written this way because this is the way that it's vocalized. I'm not sure if that's the reason why, but that is just my hunch. If you follow that logic in Germany, you're either going to be months too early or months too late for your appointment or your train or your plane. So just be aware that here in Germany, that's always written day, month, and then year. And this is in order of smallest increment of time to the largest. In that aspect, that makes quite a lot of sense to me to do it that way, but I was certainly not used to thinking of dates in that way. So just remember, if you book any tickets for anything or a tour, make sure that you are 100% certain that it is the day that you really want, because here in Europe, it is always written day, month, year. So number 5 is a kind of an interesting one because it's only a difference of handwriting. And you're probably like, how difficult could that be? For the Americans out there, what number do you think this is? For me, I assumed this was a 7. This is how Americans write 7. Some people write it with the hatch across, and some people don't. But in the US, you might find it most commonly without the dash. So when I saw this number, I thought it was a 7. Well, I was wrong. It is in fact a 1. This is how we write a 1 in the US. Typically just a line, or sometimes a little roof, and sometimes a little bottom. But usually it's just the single line. Well, here in Germany, this is a 1. And this is a 7. The 7 should always have the dash across, and the 1 always has a ridiculously long tail, or nose, I guess, depending on which direction you think it's facing. Still continues to be a source of confusion for me when I am writing letters back to the US and the address includes a 1 in it. So actually my compromise has been to always draw it as close to a typewritten 1 as possible with the little roof and the little floor as well. Now let's talk some really big numbers here. 1 million, 1 billion, 1 trillion. Well, if you are speaking to a German about numbers this big, don't be confused if you hear these words come up in a conversation and they might be confused about what you mean. And that's because there's some false friends that you need to be aware of. False friends are words that you find in both the languages, but they do not mean the same thing. Gift, for instance, is a word in English that means something that you get for Christmas or your birthday. But here in Germany, gift is poison. So don't poison your friends on Christmas. So we have a similar situation here when we're talking about these really big numbers, million, billion, and trillion. At least for million, it's exactly the same. 1 million is eine Million. However, it gets a little bit interesting when you get to billion, which is in fact eine Milliarde. The really tricky, interesting thing is when you get to 1 trillion in English is in fact eine Billion auf Deutsch. Why couldn't we have come to an agreement about these words? I mean, that's not confusing in the slightest. Could we have worked together a little bit more on these ones? Because that one is confusing as heck. Okay, so for more counting fun, let's talk about counting on your fingers. Now, I know this is a common topic and was featured in the film of Inglourious Basterds, but I just want to reiterate this in case you ever need to order something with your fingers in a very crowded bar. Let's go over the way Americans would count to 5. 1, starting with the pointer finger.
2, 3, 4, 5.
Well, here in Germany, they start counting with the thumb. So it starts as 1,
2, 3, 4, 5.
Now I have to say, counting the German way actually kind of hurts my fingers. I don't know if anybody else feels the same way, but when I get to about 4, it's quite uncomfortable for my little fingers out here. It feels quite unnatural. Maybe it's something that I need to get used to over time. Anyway, so that you can see that there might be some confusion if you're in a crowded bar and then maybe they can't hear you. Sometimes it is best just to use your fingers for the amount of things that you want to order. Just be careful not to order too many beers. Just kidding, you can't order too many beers. Come on, come on. Okay, so here we are at number 8, which is my absolute favorite. Now, I have talked about this in a couple of videos, but it is one of the things that I think is quite mind-blowing to many Americans. But of course, to any German or European, it's sort of like a duh. When you are in a shop and you need to buy something and you pick something off the shelf, the price that you pay is the price that is listed on the shelf. Now, there's been quite a lot of discussion on my former videos about this topic, and Germans are even quite surprised that Americans don't have the final price listed for the items when you pick it up off the shelf. And in fact, some have even suggested that it's sort of like a bait and switch, you know, like the price is listed there, but when you get to the counter, the tax is added at that point. So you really have no idea what the final price is going to be. Maybe you have an idea in your head what the sales tax might be, but still it's quite difficult to pay in exact change, let's say, if you don't know what the final price will be. For us in the US, this is not such a problem because we pay with everything by card. So we're not sitting there counting every last penny. Here in Germany, especially when you are paying for something quite small or a single thing at the shop, the cashiers actually really appreciate when you can give either exact change or close to exact if it's just a very low priced item. Cards are becoming more common here in Germany, but still quite slowly. So until that point, Germany is still largely a cash-based society for smaller purchases. I do think it is a wonderful thing to have the full price listed on the shelf so that you know exactly what you're going to pay and that there's zero guessing about it. Are there any Americans out there who have really struggled after moving to Germany or Europe more broadly with these differences in numbers? Did you ever miss your train connection or get confused with the 1s and 7s? And likewise for the Germans and Europeans, when you went to the US, did you ever bring like the complete wrong clothing for the temperature outside? Please let me know in the comments down below your experiences. And if you learned something today about numbers in Germany, please give me a like. And if you like these kind of videos where you want to hear more about life in Germany from the perspective of an American, then please give me a subscribe. And don't forget to hit the notification bell so that you don't miss any of my videos. So thanks for sticking around to the end, guys. I will be seeing you in my next video.